Yo guys, what is going on? Today we're going to be talking about a very captivating topic. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, but color me surprised. I think it's genuinely mind-boggling how criminally underused the characters I'm going to be talking about are, and how this topic hasn't been discussed already. I mean, due to how palpable it is. I know this video will leave much to be desired and will probably subvert lots of expectations, but I don't know. I've always had a thing for comparing fictional characters, be it anime, video games, cartoons, you name it. Yeah, basically, needless to say, I was very eager to make this video. Video games have a plethora of very powerful original characters. Now, when I say original, I mean, Mortal Kombat has a lot of them, Street Fighter, Tekken, and all that, but I'm looking for games that are, well, they call them character action games nowadays, or hack and slash, slice and dice, beat 'em up games, whatever you really want to call them. Characters such as Kratos, Raiden, Noctis, Bayonetta, 2B, all of which are beyond qualified for an in-depth power scaling video. But the two characters that stand out as the most unique to me are, well, you guessed it, by the title obviously, Alex Mercer from Prototype and Dante from Devil May Cry, the two iconic characters everyone knows and loves. So, characters with, these two have these famous signature moves like Stinger or Real Impact, or the infamous bullet dive drop. Now, yeah, speaking of which, Dhalsim from Infamous is a very eligible candidate for power scaling. But yeah, anyway, both DMC and Prototype make you feel like a superhuman. Like, I don't mean to sound like IGN, but the movement in Prototype, the unprecedented combat in DMC, the liberty it offers is second to none. And DMC being the magnum opus of hack and slash games, okay, I know it's it's a bold statement to make, and I might not be quite fit to make it as I haven't played that many hack and slash games, but it's all subjective, so yeah. All this begs the question, who would win in a fight between Alex Mercer and Dante? Oh, and by the way, this video, yeah, featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series. Like, wow, what a witty attempt. So yeah, basically, okay, now let's commence with this, abysmally inaccurate comparison of the two characters. Now, a thing or two about this video, for starters, firstly, I sincerely apologize in advance for the somewhat misleading and deceptive title, so I won't blame you if this video doesn't meet your expectations, because, this video will be totally reliant on the viewer's imagination, and due to my sorely limited, actually no, non-existent editing skills and resources, I can't exactly make this video an animation or an actual death battle, so there's no way for me to, illustrate it in any way, so I won't blame you if you click off the video, because I'm fully culpable for this and I take full responsibility for disappointing you. But these are things that I'm not even remotely capable of, so I'll try to compensate by adding some pics or videos to make sure you get the better picture. Then again, maybe it'd be best to watch this video with your eyes closed and let your imagination guide you. Yeah, quality content, am I right? So, nonetheless, I'll try to make some convincing and compelling arguments, hopefully. Yeah, and also, I've fully come to terms and embraced the fact that I cannot keep things concise and succinct. So yeah, don't expect this video to be a brief video. Now, yeah, well, let me start this off by saying that comparing fictional characters to one another is, oh god, it's like an extremely aggravating and convoluted process to grasp, let alone elaborate on. And it can get really obnoxious to talk about real easily. And sometimes it's hard to compare characters from the same verse, let alone characters from entirely different verses. And with video games, the amount of problems proliferates because the power scaling in these particular video games, the two that I'm going to be talking about, is not very consistent at all. And there's an immense discrepancy as to how the characters perform in gameplay and how they perform in cutscenes. So, mostly for the sake of retaining the balance of the gameplay, it's win-win. If you want to retain the balance, and if you want to make the gameplay look good and feel good, the performance of these characters mid-game and mid-cutscene is not going to be in conjunction with one another. So the overall lore is often very erroneous and exaggerates things, like when they said how Virgil's Yamato can cut through anything, even though it didn't cut through Ladies Kalina and rocket launcher. So yeah, there's that. But, you know, like, regardless, this topic seemed moderately tangible to me at first, so I decided to make a video on it, as you can see, because I was able to visualize the battle while I was taking a shower, and my imagination is susceptible to these ideas, so yeah, I take really long showers. Anyway, yeah, it turns out that these two verses aren't as incompatible as I originally thought they'd be. So let's specify on how this fight would unfold, and it will take place in New York, Manhattan, Times Square to be precise. It'll be deserted, conveniently, and it's going to be daytime. So let's state the rudimentary feats of our competitors and thoroughly dissect their respective abilities, or at least try to. So I'm not sure if these circumstances benefit either of the fighters, though Mercer is more familiar with Manhattan, so that could be kind of advantageous, maybe, you know, he knows all those buildings. Yeah, so if you've played Prototype, you'll know that Mercer's body is comprised entirely out of viral biomass. He is the embodiment of the Mercer virus. He is the virus itself, and he can manipulate and absorb organic matter, and if need be, convert it to more biomass. He can consume individuals, which ultimately, you know, results in his absorbing their memories, skills, knowledge, and even their physical form, which he can then assume. Once he consumes another being, he regenerates and gains more biomass, which amplifies his strength, naturally. And his physical prowess, oh boy, like, Mercer has augmented endurance, durability, superhuman speed, superhuman strength, like, gargantuan strength. Augmented, like, agility, a rapid healing factor, which is pivotal to his, I don't know, being, shape-shifting, adaptability, all sorts of things. Like, he can transform his body parts into weapons at will. He can camouflage himself, easily lift insanely heavy objects and throw them to great distances with little to no difficulty. He can pulverize tanks, he can obliterate helicopters, he can annihilate entire army bases, he can eradicate entire hive-infested buildings of brawlers, hunters, and juggernauts. And, like, these bases can't be damaged even by multiple tank and helicopter missiles, yet he can punch holes through them. Like, he can punch holes through anything, really, even reinforced steel doors. He can climb onto walls and buildings. He can jump around in a parkour-like fashion. He can leave craters in the ground with his bare fists, and his speed basically surpasses that of helicopters and other aerial vehicles. What else? His jump is insane, and he gains a considerable amount of altitude solely by jumping. Like, his leg strength allows him to leap 10 stories into the air, sometimes even more. Mercer can't really fly or levitate, but he can glide by ejecting small amounts of mass and manipulating it for further propulsion through the air. And he can also air dash and has a lot of air boosts, and he can survive falls of any height. He's immune to any external damage. He can repel missiles with ease. His body literally renders him immune to otherwise debilitating injury in every way. He feels no fatigue due to his nearly limitless stamina. He can instantaneously heal any damage dealt to him by any sort of projectile, and he can gradually heal even without having to consume another individual. The bullets can perforate his body, but they're essentially innocuous since the wounds will regenerate the holes immediately, automatically. He also has enhanced senses, allowing him to see through smoke and miscellaneous, otherwise imperceptible areas and things. And as for his arsenal, he can transform his arm into a blade, a whip fist, claws, hammer fist, muscle mass, shield, and he can even envelop himself in armor that is comprised out of this biomass. And in the comic, I don't know, like, Mercer was slowed down by more than 10 Gs of gravitational force, and then he just walked away from it. Like, his adaptability is insane. Like, Venom ain't got shit on this guy. Also, my prototype, on my prototype video from 2013 or 14 that is blown up for absolutely no reason at all. I don't know what YouTube the YouTube algorithm is doing, but you know, this video amassed over 670k views and has become the most viewed video on my channel, which got me very perplexed, honestly. And I've noticed a lot of people comparing Mercer to the notorious Venom, you know, and I guess it can't be helped given how, you know, how reminiscent Mercer's abilities are to that of Venom, but in the end, I still think Mercer's more badass, so. Also, Heller, before being infused with the Mercer virus, he tried slitting Mercer's throat, and it had absolutely, like, zero effect, and I think this speaks volumes about Mercer's durability, so. Yeah. And now for our next contestant, Dante. Wow, like, from the Devil May Cry series. He shares a myriad of similarities with Mercer with regard to power and ability. Like, I'm probably gonna be accentuating this similarity a lot, even after the death battle finishes, so yeah. He possesses superhuman strength, superhuman speed, endurance, durability, agility, and in addition to all that, he also has an insane accelerated healing factor. And where he can basically heal any wound with great velocity. But unlike Mercer, who has biomass manipulation, Dante has demon power manipulation. Like, you know how Mercer can emit blackish, reddish particles? Dante, on the other hand, has, like, Dante's demonic aura is red, and he can use it to, like, imbue his weapons with it, including his firearms, as is the case with Ebony and Ivory. And he can also imbue the air or his body parts with it, so yeah. He's also capable of telekinesis, though this wasn't very emphasized. It happened when he stopped the bike Trish threw at him, and he stopped it with relative ease in midair. His raw body strength far exceeds that of an average human, and after awakening his devil power in Devil May Cry 3, like in DMC 3, after his battle with Virgil, the pressure of his bare fist was capable of shattering a block of stone into smithereens. Like, he has no difficulty overpowering foes much bigger and much more imposing than himself, and this can be seen in DMC 4, where he blocked the Savior's giant punch with his sword without displaying much strain. And as for his speed, he is blindingly fast, and utilizing his trickster style, he can seemingly teleport. And during his younger years, he was capable of swinging his sword so fast when he was clashing against Virgil that the raindrops couldn't escape his blade over a wide radius, and he cut like 100,000 raindrops in a second. And while Dante was running down the tower like Temen Negru, he shot Rebellion with his gun, causing it to fall so quickly it began superheating the air around it, and then he chased his sword fast enough to catch up to it, and eventually reaching a speed great enough that the air around his hand became overheated as well, and like, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, honestly. Like, Dante's reflexes are also fast enough to the point where he can dodge bullets, slice them, shoot them, catch them with his teeth, like, bite the bullet literally. And he's quite the acrobat as well. Like, he's capable of balancing himself on a flying rocket, jumping and walking on tentacles, vertical walls. I mean, look at his battle with the Savior or Urizen. He walked on Urizen's tentacle upside down. And he was, in his own words, stabbed and jabbed by a number of things. And he can simply shrug off any of these punctures and stab wounds, like in DMC 3, when a multitude of demons stabbed him, and he was like, "Eh, what else? I just want my pizza." He can withstand hellfire attacks and, like, obviously, like, missile attacks and lightning strikes with no difficulty. And he has insane weapon proficiency. He can get accustomed to literally any weapon he picks up. He's also an insanely skilled swordsman, marksman, and he's also a seasoned martial artist who encapsulates, like, a wide array of fighting styles. Oh, and he's also a biker and a hatter. And he's also well-versed in music, like with Nevin. So, yeah, what else we got? Well, yeah, well, basically, his analytical skills are sometimes, like, off the charts. He has a good eye for reading people, and in the anime, he's even somewhat of a detective, capable of accurately assessing and estimating the cause of things. I mean, the guy's a prodigy in a lot of aspects, and in this video, we'll be using Dante's DMC 5 version, like that variant, meaning that he'll use his arsenal from Devil May Cry 5, which, if I have to say in the matter, is, like, is like the best arsenal he's ever had, as it encompasses a variety of weapons, and we won't delve into the specifics of each of the weapons, but he is equipped with the Devil's Sword Dante, King Cerberus, the Balrog, the Cavalier, the Fostad, Ebony and Ivory, the Coyote A, and the Kalina II, each of these weapons having more than one form usually. Dante also managed to travel through space and destroy like an alternate universe Mundus created, and this was in DMC 1 before DMC 4 and 5, when he fused with Sparta and stuff. And in DMC 5, he fused with both the Rebellion and Sparta, like absorbing it, and surpassing his father even further, since the Sparta was the incarnation of his father's soul, and, you know, he was basically being infused with demonic energy from the Qliphoth tree for, like, a month, and this also granted him a noticeable boost. Like, he was able to go toe-to-toe with, and even overpower Virgil, who was the fusion of Urizen and V, who had eaten the Qliphoth fruit. Like, this is a big deal. And we've already established that he's got a surplus of, well, weapons at his disposal. Whew, and now with that out of the way, we can finally get to the meat and potatoes of this video. Well, kinda. Not yet. I'm gonna be nerfing Dante a little, and DMC3, he could use the Quicksilver and Doppelganger styles. The former allows him to stop, or well, slow down time, and the latter allows him to create a clone of himself to fight in his stead, or on his behalf. And since he hasn't shown these two styles in any of the games other than DMC3, and since we're like any of the later iterations, and since we're using his, DMC 5 variant, we are basically, I think it's fair to not to include these. So, though they are very hacks. So, yeah, basically, I've scoured a wide array of forums in search of the slightest sliver of validation I could come across to confirm my statements or opinions or predictions, and I've seen people usually putting their money on Dante, DMC4 Dante, mind you. But their arguments are insufferably bad and fall short, and there seems to be this unfathomably asinine misconception that Dante would stomp, like, simply, like, because of his experience or royal guard, which I genuinely doubt in all honesty. Like, Dante can pierce Mercer's heart or decapitate him? Like, that's hilariously stupid, because Mercer's body is composed entirely out of biomass. He doesn't even have any organs or vital spots, I think, so pinpointing a weak spot would be an insanely intricate task to tackle. And his clothes, by the way, are also a part of his body. He can't change them. Like, how does he even take a piss? Like, I guess he can manipulate his genes to make a protrusion to eject your... Okay, enough. Anyway, at any rate, like, I don't think Dante would one-shot Mercer, and this would certainly not be a walk in the park for him as many people claim it would be. And the same goes for Mercer. Naturally, it's not going to be cakewalk for either of the fighters here. And taking into account that Mercer is a force to be reckoned with himself, something these people tend to be oblivious to, I guess, I think it would be like safe to say that he would be able to give Dante a run for his money. And one thing is certain, to call these guys like OP would be an understatement, but to say that this fight would be a cinch for them both just doesn't click with me. It doesn't sit right with me, doesn't resonate with me because you'll see, you'll see. I will, however, give these people that thing that Dante would stomp Mercer the benefit of the doubt, and yeah, let's go. Without further ado, for the 1000th time, like, the legendary senile boomer going through a midlife crisis versus an emo edgy Zika virus patient wearing a leather jacket over a hooded sweatshirt over a long sleeve shirt. So both of them are in their prime, and again, this may not be fully accurate at all. It's my thoughts on what would happen, and even though we may seemingly be acquainted with the mechanics of each of the games and familiar with the powers, this can easily change when the plot requires it. That's why their powers fluctuate from weak to strong and are volatile to a degree, so please don't misconstrue. So how exactly do we start this? Like, we know the setting and all, but what about the encounter itself? Like, how and why does all this transpire? What are the incentives our contestants have for fighting? Are they going to be completely devoid of all moral rectitude? Like, what's the motive? Bloodlust? Some R&R? Maybe we can fabricate this scenario where Dante finds himself in New York that just so happens to be, like, deserted for plot reasons, wanting to try out the latest Domino's pizza, and when lo and behold, he comes across Alex Mercer, who just so happens to hate cheesy crust pizza, and he wants to kill Dante for having a different opinion, and since it's 2019, so he lounges at the Wacky Woohoo Pizza guy, and okay, I'm having way too much fun with this. So Mercer, like, just so happens to see Dante as a formidable adversary worth consuming. Okay, imagine if that actually happened. Like, we need Goku up in this bitch. Okay, so this prompts Mercer to fight him, and Dante's interest is also piqued, and he goes, "Oh, you're approaching me." Okay, like, he deems the other party worth fighting, and this galvanizes Dante to engage in combat. Or he just wants to assert dominance. Or Mercer is evil and has some diabolic plan, and yeah, like, he displays a hostile demeanor, and Dante wants to stop him at all costs from wreaking havoc or something. Or for the lulz. I mean, Dante is an inquisitive fella, what do you know? Okay, so simple enough, huh? Let's pretend it is, at least. So they skip the formalities, and they have no prior knowledge of each other's abilities, so they'll have to, they will be forced to, like, rely on their prudence and intellect for the most part. Dante has great analytical skills, whereas Mercer has consumed thousands of people and has acquired their skills and intellect. He's basically the amalgamation of all the people he's consumed, and their traits are basically embedded into him, so yeah, no holds barred. But they won't pull out all the stops from the get-go. They won't go all out just this once, senpai. Nothing personnel, kid. They're gonna progressively and slowly take their sweet time testing each other's abilities. And after witnessing each other's strength, Dante will probably see Mercer as a menace and a threat that must be eliminated, and also a hindrance to his quest for pizza, and yeah, let's say the Mercer's desire to make a snack out of Dante gets sparked even further upon exchanging the first blow with him. And I don't know how much emphasis and focus I should put on the interaction between the two, and how immersive it would make the whole thing, but I'll try my absolute best to do a somewhat meticulous job in making this as intelligible and as comprehensible as conceivably possible, and make sure you guys are, well, invested. So here we go. So Dante tests the waters by firing a preemptive shot from his double Kalina Ann 2, imbued with demonic energy, right off the bat. But despite his expectedly futile attempt, Mercer isn't phased and unscathed, since, as we already know, firearms of any caliber have no effect on him. Dante goes, omashiroi, and they proceed with engaging in hand-to-hand combat. And as we all know, Dante in DMC3, at the age of 19, I think, was capable of destroying an entire stone block from the sheer force of his fist, base form. And as we already know, Mercer has superhuman strength too, so a fist fight between the two should, like, be a sight to behold. And in the midst of exchanging blows and kicks with one another, like, Mercer comes to the realization that Dante has a slight edge over him, that he's somewhat effortlessly countering his blows. Now, keep in mind that Dante has experience as a martial artist, as opposed to Mercer, who simply fully uses the benefits of the virus by implementing brute force. That being said, it's not like Mercer doesn't have a variety of parkour-like maneuvers to implement in combat, so he is by no means incompetent, and he's no stranger to strenuous combat. So Mercer, at this point, switches to his muscle mass power. Mercer he can lift insanely heavy objects with his bare hands, but with his muscle mass, this is increased and, like, approximately tenfold. Trust me, this statistic is totally not made up. So the distance at which he throws heavy objects is also increased, and nearly every blow he makes is capable of utterly decimating the target, and he can make short work of a tank or a helicopter in a few blows, or a singular blow with this. So Dante continues with his bare hands, but shortly realizes that he doesn't want to take any chances, so he switches to his Balrog gauntlets. In DMC4, he was capable of utterly destroying a monolithic stone with equally monolithic strength, and with the Beowulf, Gilgamesh, and, like, I don't know, like, I mean, the Gilgamesh is, in my opinion, weaker than the Balrog, and yet he shattered the monolith with, like, the uttermost precision. The Balrog, in my opinion, that is, exceeds all of his previous gauntlets, like Ifrit, Beowulf, Gilgamesh, and Eryx, in a lot of aspects, though I would be hard-pressed to say that the design is better than Beowulf, but that's my opinion, so... Yeah, so Mercer's Muscle Mass versus Dante's Blow Mode Balrog. In this mode, Dante is like a professional boxer. He can dodge most of Mercer's blows smoothly with his welter move. So while Mercer's offensive strength is amped, so is Dante's with his gauntlets. So Dante and Mercer continue to exchange blows, and Dante's Balrog enters the ignition mode where it gets fiery. So this further amplifies his damage, though I'm not sure how it would affect Mercer and whether he's immune to fire or not, like completely. So Dante uses Metal Break when Mercer attempts to punch once again, and this sends a fiery shockwave towards Mercer, resulting in him getting slowly pushed back. At this point, Dante manages to use his Divine Dragon on Mercer, and while airborne, uses the Feather combo to slap Mercer to the ground, and finishes the whole thing with the Cruiser Dive move. And after this, he tries to use Real Impact on Mercer, but Mercer's reflexes allow him to avoid this. And clearly agitated, he manages to kick Dante like 3 to 4 times in the process. And Dante didn't anticipate that. He didn't see it coming because he has the propensity of being reckless and possibly even underestimating his opponents. But as prone as he is to joking and stuff, he's aware that it could prove fatal and be his undoing. So he decides to proceed with caution and be a little more vigilant. So Mercer goes Subarashi. And yeah, still, Mercer decides to switch things up once again and uses his claw power in conjunction with his hammer fist power. Now, his claws are razor sharp and they're ideal for cutting, while his hammer fists allow him to create a big, ground-shattering blow. Well, a multitude of, these, big ground-shattering shockwaves. And his physical strength in this form far exceeds his muscle mass power, so... yeah, Dante switches it up a notch too and goes crazy as he starts to breakdance on the floor with his, on the ground with the, spiral move. The move that heats up his kick mode for Balrog. So now Dante can create shockwaves simply by jumping, and now he gains access to a capoeira style of fighting, which he can freely incorporate in battle. Obviously. So Mercer sticks his claw into the ground and causes a ground spike to emerge from the ground and penetrate Dante. However, Dante sees this coming and uses the flint wheel move several times to dodge. So Dante then jumps into the air and uses friction to kick Mercer from the air. That's a move called friction. And Mercer uses the hammer fist to counter Dante's kick in midair, and the two cancel each other out, though there is a bit of fire in Mercer's hammer fist, which he extinguishes easily. So Dante goes, you're not the only one that can use both of his powers at once, so he mixes his blow and kick mode Balrog to fight Mercer, and Mercer's claw hammer fist combo more effectively. So, let's say that, at this point, Mercer starts walking on a building and tries to elbow slam Dante, but Dante uses updraft and they once again cancel each other out. But Dante follows up with Pyromania, a relentless barrage of kicks which he, unleashes on Mercer. And the fire is so big that he can't even see what's happening, and when the smoke clears up, he sees that Mercer was able to counter his final blows with his shield power. Now Dante, somewhat puzzled, doesn't see Mercer's hammer fist getting imbued with biomass, and Mercer lands a direct hit while shattering the ground in the process. However, Dante manages to alleviate the impact and mitigate the damage the hammer fist Smackdown move would have originally inflicted with his Royal Guard, and he goes, not half bad. But, Mercer realizes that having the Hammer Fist, it is an effective tool that deals a great deal of damage, but it's also, it also slows down his movements, so he transforms his claw into the Whip Fist, and his Hammer Fist, it reverts back to his muscle mass power. Dante, at this point, starts using his King Cerberus, and with the Whip Fist intact, Mercer has a lot more range than before. Dante jumps, and Mercer, fires his Whip Fist at Dante. and Dante uses his revolver to counter Mercer's Whip Fist, but then he imbues it with lightning to make it easier. Now Mercer's Whip Fist, like, it gets struck by the electricity from the Cerberus, and Mercer gets slightly incapacitated, and Dante uses this opportunity, like, he keeps using the revolver, and he eventually hits Mercer. And while on the ground, he uses percussion to stun Mercer with lightning. And he then wraps one of Mercer's hands, the one with the muscle mass, with his Cerberus, causing it to start freezing. And while Dante has never demonstrated this sort of feat, I don't think, like, it's not too outlandish to assume that it's, like, it could be possible. So, with his Cerberus around Mercer's muscle mass, freezing it, and with Mercer immobilized, Dante uses his Balrog Blow mode once again to land a frenetic barrage of punches on Mercer. And Mercer, visibly exasperated, grabs his Balrog arm with his Whip Fist, frees himself from the constraint of Dante's Cerberus, and throws Dante onto a building with his Whip Fist, shattering the building. Now, Dante uses air recovery to recover, but, you know, Mercer uses the Whip Fist to fetch a bunch of vehicles and tanks that just so happen to be lying about, like, you know, because plot convenience, it's a thing. And he throws them at Dante with his muscle mass, and like, enhancing the distance and the impact of the throw. And Dante sees, like, I don't know, 5 tanks flying towards him, so he just uses Ice Sage to create a ball of ice around him to protect him, and it all works like a barrier, and it all works like a successful barrier, so... yeah, Mercer and Dante close in on one another, and Dante starts using his Ice Nunchucks Cerberus mode, and he lands a few hits on Mercer, but Mercer seems unfazed. So Mercer then grabs Dante with his Whip Fist once more, but by the leg this time, and tosses him around with his Grapple Slam. Dante permeates his leg with demonic aura at this point, and breaks free of Mercer's grasp. And Mercer uses his Whip Fist to fetch a helicopter from the ground, but Dante effortlessly fends it off with his Turbulence or Revolution attack. And this attack, it's like, it's basically like Chidori Nagashi for his Cerberus. Then again, his percussion move is also like Chidori Nagashi to some extent, so yeah. Anyway, like, Dante begins to realize that Mercer isn't fazed by fire and ice, but he seems to be vulnerable to lightning. Mercer, on the other hand, realizes that Dante's weakness is the Whip Fist, and, you know, I mean, since he was able to catch him off guard with it twice. Dante also couldn't, like, anticipate Mercer's shield, so Mercer thinks he should make the battle more defensive and should start using ranged attacks. So Dante decides to start paying more attention to his Whip Fist. Well, Mercer's Whip Fist, that is. Dante obviously doesn't have one. So, now that he's aware of the Whip Fist's repetitive patterns and maneuvers, he thinks he should be able to counter it with ease. Mercer turns his muscle mass into a Hammer Fist again, and he uses the Whip Fist on Dante to try and wrap it around his body and close him in and punch him multiple times with the powerful Hammer Fist. Like, think of it like kind of like how Naruto grabbed Sasuke with his Kyuubi, like the Kyuubi cloak tail, and then he punched him in their final valley fight. You know, like, you know what I'm talking about. I'm gonna add the scene into the video, so yeah. But yeah, anyway, Dante climbs and walks onto his Whip Fist and attempts to punch Mercer with his Balrog Gauntlet. However, Mercer counters it with his Hammer Fist, and, like, he once again uses the Whip Fist on Dante, who is once again airborne, and Dante transforms his Cerberus Ice Nunchucks into a Firebow Staff. And he uses his pole play move to pole dance in midair while creating a whirlwind of fire, and thus dodging Mercer's Whip Fist. He then transforms his Cerberus to a Lightning Sunset's Cone, that's like a 3-section staff, and uses the long barrel attack, hitting Mercer's Hammer Fist with a Lightning Bolt. And Mercer has great adaptability, so Lightning doesn't seem to be working as efficiently as before, but his Hammer Fist is now useless. And even though Mercer isn't stunned, Dante manages to use Hot Stuff. I mean, you know, the move, like, you know, Hot Stuff, like the move where he spins his fiery staff, and he spins it around Mercer this time. So this creates a lot of smoke, and Mercer uses his thermal vision to see through the smoke. But before he can see what's going on, Dante uses Thunderclap, causing numerous lightning orbs to fly towards Mercer, while he uses Regicide, or King Slayer, to hit Mercer with a variety of lightning attacks, with the Sunset's Cone form of Cerberus, that is. So Mercer uses a shield to successfully fend off and defend against Dante's blows, and realizing that the Whip Fist is no longer as effective as it used to be on Dante, and, realizing that, lightning isn't as effective as it used to be on Mercer, the two decide to switch things up once more. Mercer starts using his blade, and nothing but his blade, and Dante uses his double sword Dante. Wow, so didn't see this coming. Anyway, Mercer, infuriated that he has to fight for so long, uses his frenzy move to rush towards Dante with his blade, and Dante uses his million stab technique to counter Mercer, but then he uses the Summon Sword's Stinger to push Mercer back even further. So the two exchange consecutive blows in succession, but Dante's sword is clearly overpowering Mercer's blade. I mean, Mercer's blade is literally just a protrusion from his body, and, it's like an organic mass, whereas Dante's blade is a manifestation of his will, and can also use the Summon Swords to aid him in battle by fighting on his behalf and defending him, so, yeah, However, while Mercer's blade is attached to his body, Dante's isn't, so Mercer's objective right now is to kick the sword out of Dante's hands and somehow subdue him, and Dante endeavors to perhaps, cut Mercer's blade off. Maybe? I don't know. Mercer uses his air slice to drop down on Dante midair with his sword, but Dante blocks it with his royal guard, and then Dante reciprocates by trying to employ a similar strategy, and he uses the Helmbreaker move on Mercer, but Mercer guards it with his shield, so Mercer and Dante continue to exchange swings with their swords and blows, and then Dante decides to step his game up and now enters the Flame Formation power. Wow. This causes Dante's sword to bifurcate and open, if you will. Not only does it give him more speed and damage, it also summons swords to fight on his behalf and defend him of their own accord, or in accordance with his moves, if necessary. So Mercer can only imbue his sword with biomass in hopes of matching Dante's sword now, but not only is Dante's sword more powerful, Dante is a better swordsman. Dante is dominating the battle right now, pushing Mercer back with his simultaneous use of both summoned swords and his regular sword. Mercer and Dante clash once again, and Mercer decides to morph one of his arms into muscle mass and push Dante away somehow or grab his sword. But Dante's summoned swords establish the interceptor position and start flying towards Mercer and piercing him, but it is to no avail as Mercer's body easily dismisses these attacks, and basically, it dismisses the attacks as minuscule and heals his wounds, so yeah. So regardless, Dante's sword is too much for Mercer to handle, and the summoned swords are a menace nonetheless, so Mercer tries to take the battle into the air, and while Mercer has the advantage here, given his ability to glide and air dash and climb onto buildings with ease, Dante, as skilled as he is, isn't as skilled as Mercer in this department. Dante he does have his own set of insane skills, as the ones he demonstrated against the Savior and Urizen, but Mercer is on a whole other echelon. Or is he? Dante takes up the challenge, and Mercer gets the high ground and jumps really high, gaining a lot of altitude. He then uses the bullet dive drop to fall directly onto Dante, causing a massive shockwave. And what happens next is kind of let's say that this attempt proves fruitless, because, Dante's summoned swords defend him automatically from any blow, so it's like he always has Royal Guard on. In the game, that's not exactly how it works, as he'd have to switch to the Royal Guard style, but styles are only a gameplay mechanic. We assume that Dante can use all of his styles simultaneously, on the go. So Mercer then tries using his flying kick and cannonball attacks, but none of them break Dante's guard. Summoned swords, that is. So, let's say that Mercer decides not to close in this time and takes the battle to the air once again, climbing onto a building. Dante laughs, and his summoned sword starts spinning around him, Well, yeah, like they start spinning and they track Mercer in the air and eventually start slicing him up, aka the round trips attack. And Mercer is trapped in midair, and Dante, at this point, uses his Fostat. He uses the magic hat move to separate the hat from his head, and then the hat starts shooting red orbs at Mercer as he's being sliced by the summoned swords. At this point, Dante assumes the JoJo stance, and he starts charging up his demonic energy for his Red Hot Knight move, and while the summoned swords and red orbs are assaulting Mercer in continuity, Dante summons 10 colossal meteor-like red orbs from the sky to fall on Mercer and ultimately decimate him. And as the meteors ensnare Mercer, and as he's being inundated by the red orbs and summoned swords, and in addition to that, he goes ballistic and uses his Tendril Barrage Devastator to destroy both the orbs and the summoned swords and the meteors. And the tentacles go for Dante, and then Dante climbs onto them and starts cutting them. Mercer then immediately uses his Critical Pain Devastator to fire a Kamehameha ray tendril at Dante. And Dante, still climbing the tentacles, uses his Devil Sword Dante's Overdrive attack to counter Mercer's Kamehameha. And the attacks collide, and Mercer then tackles Dante and uses his Ground Spike Graveyard Devastator and falls to the ground with Dante, causing an insane amount of spikes to emerge from the ground. And the summoned swords got used up in his last round trip attack, and they can no longer defend him. Some of the ground spikes manage to pierce Dante, but he disregards it, and the spikes continue to track him through the ground. And as this is happening, Dante uses his King Cerberus crystal attack to cancel the spikes out with his own ice spikes. Mercer's Ground Spike Graveyard Devastator and Dante's King Cerberus Crystal attack, the spikes and the ice spikes manage to cancel each other out somehow. And despite Dante's summoned swords being gone, he has another means of defense. He uses his Faustat to generate a spiral of red orbs that carpet the area around him and damage Mercer on contact. This serves as both offense and defense, similar to his summoned swords. The move is called, I don't exactly have any recollection of how it's called. Actually, wait, if I recall correctly, it's Man in the Red, right? So, wow. So, Mercer is once again coerced to take the fight into the air, so they're back to square one. And Mercer's safest bet is to wait for Dante to expend his red orb somehow. But to do that, he has to force him to use them. But Mercer knows that he has no projectile attacks, and his Whip Fist wouldn't be as effective as before. So, what does he do? So he decides to throw a bunch of shit at Dante at this point. Okay, yeah, I'm desperate. He's desperate. Cut me some slack. Please. Dante's orbs spin around him and protect him from Mercer's throws and serve as a good deterrent. But they eventually run out because plot reasons. So, Dante has expended a lot of stamina himself, so we can, kinda use that excuse. And this is where the climax starts. The battle steadily escalates as Dante and Alex take their battle to the sky. And notwithstanding Mercer's superior parkour ability, Dante's flexibility and movements are kind of up to par with his to an extent. And they're not precisely tantamount to Mercer's aerial flexibility, but it hits close to home, So they fly from rooftop to rooftop, building to building. They both walk on buildings and exchange blows with various weapons, like hammer fists, muscle mass, you name it. Mercer can glide, but Dante can, so the odds are kind of in Mercer's favor, and he has the upper hand, seemingly. So Dante uses Rainstorm with his ebony and ivory guns, but this is merely a diversion, and he knows full well that Mercer is impervious to bullets. So he kicks Mercer into the other building, but Mercer uses his Whip Fist to try and grab Dante, but Dante dodges. So Dante then uses his Cavalier Buzzsaw to cut Mercer, and then he morphs it into a bike and uses the Redline move to knock Mercer into the other building. Mercer then continues to exchange blows with Dante in midair, and Dante uses Royal Guard to block all of them. The more attacks Dante blocks with his Royal Guard, as we all know, the more demonic energy he'll get to fuel his gauge. At this point, Dante's amassed more than enough energy to release it onto Mercer. And since it suffices, Dante uses Royal Release and releases all the energy from all of the attacks he blocked from Mercer. throughout the fight to damage Mercer. Mercer gets utterly discombobulated, and the damage he received is alarming, but he manages to reciprocate by turning his arms into muscle mass, and somehow he uses his spike driver move to like pin Dante to the ground while in midair. So let's say that Dante falls to the ground, but that's nothing for him. And Mercer, distraught by the blow Dante landed on him, and in excruciating pain, yes, he can feel pain from what I know, he climbs onto a building, like a building rooftop to rest. Dante decides that it's time to wrap things up and get serious. Yup, he goes into his double trigger form. Oh boy. Oh boy. Like, in his double trigger form, like, Dante is exponentially more powerful. He can fly, well, he can glide, but let's say it's the same things. I mean, he has wings, for fuck's sake. He can gradually replenish his lost health. His damage and speed are significantly amped, and attacks that could harm him before can't do shit to him now. Also, yeah, to add insult to injury, flame formation is automatic for this form, so that means that he has all of his summoned swords back. And they enhance each of his styles up to 3 times. Like, he can teleport thrice in one go, he can move a lot more freely through the air, etc. Like, so you do the math. This makes things way more cumbersome for Mercer. Mercer drops down on the ground with his bullet die drop, but Dante quickly uses the Dance Macabre move on him. His double sword Dante and every weapon he has now and every move he does is amped by the summoned swords. It's called the Chaser attack. Mercer goes all out as well, and he resorts to his armor mode. And basically, like, he transforms one of his arms into a blade and the other into muscle mass, and this is all at the expense of his speed. However, this is detrimental to, like, Mercer for a multitude of reasons. While Dante's double trigger allows him to slowly regenerate his health, and it amplifies his damage and defense and enables him to fly, Mercer's armor slows him down. Like, it slows down his movements, deprives him of his ability to jump. Like, he can jump, but he can't jump high, and he cannot glide or perform any of his savvy feats. So, in this form, Mercer relinquishes his major component, agility. And while it does protect Mercer, like the armor protects Mercer from Dante's summoned swords, Mercer is still driven into a corner here, and he's unable to circumvent Dante's attacks or escape the predicament he's found himself in and his impending bane. So the armor is, in that case, full of shortcomings in all actuality. Like, he cannot close the power gap as it is, and his defensive ability is good, but Dante's is the same, if not even better, as it regenerates his health simultaneously. So, yeah, like, and Dante gained speed. Mercer lost it. At this point, Dante is toying with Mercer, and any blow he tries to land is inconsequential. Mercer withdraws due to the drawbacks and repercussions that come with his armor, so how will Mercer overcome this seemingly insurmountable obstacle and the ordeal that has bestowed itself upon him? On the brink of exhaustion, and with his state exacerbating, Mercer, let's say he, like, gazes at the sky and consumes a flock of, well, no, actually, a murder of crows from the sky with his tentacles, the same way he consumed those mutant people he made in Prototype 2. So keep in mind that Mercer took a nuke at point-blank range and fully recovered within minutes simply by consuming a single crow. And he hasn't lost any limbs so far, and there are multiple crows, so he doesn't yield yet. He's quite the tenacious fella, ain't he? Like, almost like he's a virus or something. So, yeah, he consumes all of the crows, and, he regenerates his health. And Dante takes notice and realizes that Mercer can just regenerate ad nauseum, and he decides that he has no choice. He can't fully kill Mercer, and he has a pizza to munch on, so how can he prevent this potential threat from ever occurring again and terrorizing civilians or stuff, or whatever? Let's assume Mercer is evil, because. So, since it can't be helped, Dante amasses his demonic energy and goes into a Sin Double Trigger mode, or Shinmajin form, or Perfect Double Trigger, or the Ultimate Double Trigger, whatever you really want to call it. In this form, Dante is virtually invincible and impenetrable. Like, things go really awry for Mercer, and he's basically unsalvageable at this point. Dante teleports to the top of the building with his Advent move, creating after images of himself with his ludicrous speed. He flies up and uses the luce, or luce, I don't know how you pronounce it, like it means light in Italian or Latin. So, yeah, Dante uses luce to fire a multitude of beams and rays from his wings to destroy the birds in the sky and inhibit Mercer from recuperating fully. He then uses the Umbra attack and fires the fiery orbs at Mercer, knocking him off the building. He then follows it up with a Sin DT Stinger, drilling Mercer into the air even further. And then he uses the Summoned Swords as a drill to hit Mercer and drop him down to the ground. And this is his Inferno move we're talking about. This move causes the ground and the entirety of Times Square to shatter. Like, the force of the shockwave is of catastrophic proportions, and it's so overwhelming that Mercer, who just got thrown to the ground, got thrown up into the air, he got thrown up into the air again by the sheer force of this blow. So Dante flies swiftly towards Mercer in midair and uses Judgment to stop time in midair as he uses Devil Sword Dante and the Summoned Swords to cut Mercer into pieces. After this, as Mercer's fucking dismembered body is falling through the sky, Dante lands the decisive blow by using Demolition to create a portal around Mercer's falling limbs and stop time, or well, slow down time, and erase what's left of him out of existence. GG. Spectacular, ain't it? What a phenomenal battle. By the way, this is my interpretation. Like, it has been implied nowhere that this move erases things out of existence or slows down time. This is, like, only based on the gameplay, and even in the gameplay, if you use the Demolition move to, like, if you use it on your opponents, it will destroy them completely, but not the bosses, so it's not applicable everywhere. So, but even on the off chance that Mercer somehow managed to survive, like, he'd have to go back to the drawing board again, and his attempts at procrastinating, delaying, and extending the battle would be, well, ephemeral. It will literally trigger a vicious cycle, and with no means to properly retaliate and no adequate course of action, Mercer would just prolong the agony and put his life in jeopardy further, and then end up lamenting his frailty. So it'd end on the same note, to say the least, and yeah, like, that's how the cookie crumbles. It might be a tough pill to swallow, but that's just my 2 cents on the whole thing. I mean, who knows, maybe Dante and Mercer would chill out and reconcile after their friendly spar, or Dante would leave him to his own devices and bury the hatchet, though I fail to see how that would work, but yeah. So, yeah, that's my take on this battle. I tried as hard as I possibly could to extend this battle and make them use, like, all their assets and their expansive roster of weapons and attacks to the pinnacle of their ability. And with every avenue exhausted, I guess this is the best outcome I could come up with. So, I mean, this is, you know, like, within the scope of my abilities. Once again, there might not be any permanent solution or conclusion to this battle at all. Like, I mean, but, you know, while Mercer's shape-shifting ability is an indispensable feat in his game, it wouldn't have done him any good in this battle. So, yeah. So, let's discuss a few things, such as, like, is it fair how they got their powers? I mean, Dante excessively relies on his weapons, and if someone could take them off, you know, but by that logic, Mercer also relies on his weapons, except his weapons are a part of him, and Dante, like, you know, his weapons are just not, like, if you know what I mean. So, Dante does have his demonic heritage to thank for a lot of things, and the source of his power mainly stems from that, but the staple of DMC is how humanity always triumphs over everything else. So, Dante never really cared about power, he was never avaricious, he embraced both his human and demon side, and was not driven by the need for more power. Like, he even sold his weapons to pay his bills and buy pizza. This is, like, from the novel, it's legit, so yeah, the weapons he has are basically souls of the powerful demons he has defeated with little to no difficulty. So he has every right to use them. He did defeat them. He didn't get anything served on a silver platter. And You know, I mean, it kind of reminds me of Shaman King, honestly, how he basically has weaponized souls and stuff, except he doesn't really have a guardian spirit, but, you know. In contrast to that, Mercer's weapons are a part of him. The virus made its way into his body by sheer accident, and this gave Mercer his superhuman strength and ability, but as for Mercer's intellect, experience in combat and parkour beforehand, like prior to becoming the virus, we don't really know much. We can infer some things about his intellect since, you know, he was a scientist, so yes, but I think it's safe to assume that Dante gets more credit here, in my opinion. So, also, Dante is a skilled user of a lot of weapons and a professional one at that. I don't know, he's exceptionally good at every weapon he comes across. So, yeah, I mean, in real life, that wouldn't really be feasible, but this is a fictional character, so yeah. And, you know, his Cerberus from DMC3, for example, it got destroyed in the battle, in some battle with the Balrog, I think, if I recall correctly. Though he can summon Double Sword Dante at will, because it's a manifestation of his will, I guess. I'm improvising here. Though I'm sure that the creativity implemented in this video far exceeds that of modern video game developers and, you know, anime makers and stuff. Am I right? Nah. So anyway, their regeneration and their, their regenerative abilities seem to be they seem to be finite in gameplay, but as I said before, these characters have to die in gameplay for the sake of, you know, balance. And, you know, Mercer regenerated from a nuke at point-blank range, but Heller defeated him by severing his limbs. Also, like, where were Mercer's whip, fist, muscle mass, and armor? Like, they completely excluded these things from his arsenal in Prototype 2. And Nero in DMC5 regained his lost arm because, like, and how did Nero manage to stop Dante and Virgil in their Sin Devil Trigger form? Like, I refuse to believe that that Nero's regular Devil Trigger is stronger than both Dante and Virgil, you know, like, in their Sin DT forms. I swear that was just pure plot. You could argue that they were fatigued and all, but it still wouldn't make sense how he managed to stop both of them. And then again, DMC has always been about humanity prospering and persevering and emerging victorious, so yeah. But yeah, both of these characters have some tragic backstories. Well, maybe not tragic, but let me reiterate. Like, they had a somewhat tragic backstory, but not exactly your typical shonen anime MC that got ostracized as a kid for having demonic power or something. Also, you may have noticed that I haven't really included the Cavalier in this battle. I mean, I did mention it, like, twice or thrice in one scene, and you may think I may have inadvertently turned a blind eye to it, but the decision wasn't arbitrary. It was deliberate and I did it on purpose, simply because, I don't know, the notion of Dante using this weapon on Mercer to afflict or dispose of him, it didn't initially appeal to me, and it still doesn't resonate with me. I mean, Mercer being the borderline divine entity that he is, I just don't see him even potentially struggling against or falling victim to this weapon or finding it hazardous in any way. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Cavalier is a very unorthodox, unconventional weapon, if you will, and it deals a lot of damage, and Dante is beyond adroit at using it appropriately and even immaculately, and as a matter of fact, it was like, and still is, prevalent in my playstyle in DMC5, and I mostly relied on the Cavalier when I started playing the game because of its massive air potential. Like, you can do the Swordmaster air combo, the 2-hit buzzsaw combo. You can suspend, like, your opponent in the air. And the weapon just feels really good, and I know it's a demonic weapon and that Dante can basically, like, conjure it from thin air. It, like, materializes, but at the same time, I just can't perceive how Dante would, like, confront Mercer with the Cavalier. Like, I don't know, and moreover, I can't find a single equivalent in Mercer's arsenal to make for a satisfying exchange of hits, so, he has no correspondent moves, you know, like, what would he do, like, go into his claws or hammer fists and cancel, I don't know, I really don't see it, and basically I'm just skeptical as to how Dante would be able to successfully integrate this weapon. I mean, the weapon is anything but stereotypical or mainstream, but then again, it is totally Dante. I mean, imagine Mercer, like, going with this villainous attitude and trying his hardest to kill Dante, and Dante just pulls out a fucking motorbike to break the monotony, like, I mean, hey, who knows, like, maybe Mercer would get bamboozled and mesmerized by the move, and Dante could easily, like, one-tap him, and yeah, I imagine that'd be pretty humiliating. Or Mercer sees Dante's crazy bike skills and, you know, his admiration kicks in and he acknowledges Dante as a cool guy, and then they have milkshakes. But yeah, basically the weapon isn't very intimidating. I just feel like it would disrupt the flow of the battle, at least this particular battle. But then again, Dante probably used the Cavalier versus Virgil, so yeah. Also, there's this one thing, like, the reason why Dante, well, the potential reason as to why Dante doesn't have his Quicksilver and Doppelganger styles anymore. You know, these styles were only available to him in DMC3, and basically all the focus in that game was cast on Dante. In DMC5, Dante is not the individual, like the only character. You have 3 characters, and each of these characters have their own stuff. Like, you know how Dante basically rode, like, I know that DMC5 is inspired by DMC3. I mean, it's Itsuno, so you know how Dante basically killed all those demons with his bike, or with Lady's bike in DMC3? Well, I'm sure that's what inspired them to make the Cavalier. And we already know that basically there's this one instance where Dante basically rides Lady's rocket, like when she shot a rocket from her Kalina Ann. So this definitely inspired them to make the punchline weapon for Nero, where he can basically ride his weapon. And yeah, what was I originally gonna say? Yeah, so Dante basically no longer has these styles, but Nero has the ragtime. And it's exactly the same thing, like that horse, the time horse, I keep forgetting its name, like, yeah, so basically, like, you can definitely see that Dante's Quicksilver is now something that Nero has access to, so yeah, basically he can freeze time, well, slow down time, so yeah. And as for his Doppelganger attack, well, Virgil now has that, basically, you know, I mean, Virgil basically uses this attack in their final battle, and you could argue that this was inspired by DMC, like, the reboot, but I don't really know, like, because this feature was first presented to us, and it was first introduced in DMC3, so we can't really speculate. But yeah, basically, even though the focus in DMC5 wasn't cast entirely on Dante, since we've got 3 more characters, Dante still has the best moveset. Like, this arsenal he currently has in DMC5 is, in my opinion, better than the ones he used to have. I mean, he has his Sin DT form, which is basically like an awakening with an entirely different moveset. Like, it's insane. And basically all of his weapons, like, he has 4 melee weapons, if you don't count the Rebellion and the Sparta, because those are basically the same weapons as the Delisor Dante. But if, like, you take this into account, like, Dante has the Summon Swords as well, which is a feature that was exclusive and peculiar to Virgil. And now he has that as well, and he can use it as he sees fit. And, like, Delisor Dante has that flame formation technique that basically influences him greatly. Like, all of his attacks are amped. Like, the Chaser, Interceptor, like, all of his styles have these amazing boosts. Like, you can teleport twice instead of once with Trickster. You can guard and all that stuff. I don't really know how to explain it. You already know that the Interceptor, Gunslinger, like, amp that he gets with this sword formation. I keep calling it flame formation, I don't know why. So basically, this causes summoned swords to attack of their own accord, so that's pretty cool. And basically, Dante's other forms, like his Balrog has the blow mode and the kick mode, also like two different weapons in one weapon. The Cavalier can be a bike, but it can also be two buzzsaws. The King Cerberus basically has like three forms, like the Ice Nunchucks, the Fire Bow Staff, and the Lightning Sunset's Cone 3-section staff. So that's also like three weapons into one. And, you know, like, I mean, come on, every single one of his weapons, it's like quality over quantity. So, yeah. Also, some people are led by this axiom that, like, Dante's double trigger is dispelled if he has no weapons to wield. So, you know, like, in DMC3, like, we cannot, like, confirm the validity or the authenticity of these statements. Like, we don't know how authentic they are because in DMC3, Dante's double trigger, like the appearance of Dante's double trigger was contingent on the weapon he would wield, and you know, like in DMC4, that's just, you know, not the case. But you know, when Urizen destroyed the rebellion, Dante ran out of his double trigger. So, but when he picked up the Sparta, his double trigger was back. But when he got separated from the Sparta, he didn't have it again, and I don't know now because Dante has basically fused with both the Rebellion and the Sparta, so he should have constant access to his DT form at will, or, you know. So, but then again, his Sin Double Trigger, like, when he absorbed the Rebellion and the Sparta, he entered his Sin Double Trigger form, and then he spawned, like, he conjured his Double Sword Dante. So basically, you know, like, he didn't need to wield a weapon to enter this mode, but he did absorb them. So yeah, I think that Dante no longer requires any, you know, I don't think that, you know, Dante wielding a certain weapon is like a prerequisite for him to enter like his double trigger form or Sin DT form. So yeah. But then again, we're not certain about like whether Dante is completely absolved of this prerequisite, like whether he's exempt from having to like wield a weapon in order to access his double trigger form, because when you play the game, like in the gameplay, Dante, when he amasses the energy for Sin DT form, like the Dull Sword Dante basically appears and pierces him, like penetrates his chest, and like then he enters the Sin DT form. But then again, you have the quadruple S mechanic, which allows Dante to completely like circumvent this. Like he completely just enters his Sin DT form. That's that. So yeah, I don't really know. I'm not sure. But yeah, so there's also this one other thing that is kind of an enigma, like, you know, Dante, I keep saying that Mercer's, that Dante's guns, like Ebony and Ivory, even infused with demonic energy, wouldn't be able to do anything to Mercer, but we both know that, like, Urizen is way more menacing, if you will, than Mercer, so Dante's, like, in the prologue, Dante basically shot from his Ebony or Ivory gun, I don't really know, and this impeded Urizen from making his attack. Now, we don't know if this actually had any effect on Urizen, or whether he, you know, maybe decided to stop his attack of his own volition. So yeah, I don't really want to usher in that topic right now, for the sake of brevity, obviously, so. You know, in retrospect, maybe I should have mentioned some additional outcomes or highly plausible possibilities, but the video is already ridiculously long as it is, so stuffing it with superfluous stuff is, like, more than I'm willing to deal with right now. It's miraculous how my voice hasn't given out yet, so. Yeah, but like I said, Dante, you know, Dante's skills are nothing short of impressive. He's remarkable with guns, excels in swordsmanship, and just like Mercer, deviates from your run-of-the-mill fighter. Mercer seems to be of the same caliber as Dante, at least to some degree, but the extent of their power is yet to be explained. But you know, these two are, without a shadow of a doubt, excellent fighters. Now, as for Dante underestimating his opponents, like, one conspicuous instance is, like, when he used Chaos's barbed armor to, like, trim his beard, but then it broke free. But, you know, then again, he was fast enough to react accordingly, so... And as for his reflexes, like, aside from all the times, like, he dodged bullets and all that, like, he was capable of predicting Bale's ambush, he anticipated the Cavalier's bike throw, which, by the way, was behind him, also Fury's insanely fast, like, slash, and Virgil's slash from behind. It's kind of like Ultra Instinct, honestly. And, you know, he allowed himself to get swallowed by Echidna, like, deliberately, for no apparent reason, but he broke out of it, I guess, so... and also there are things that don't really add up in this video. Like, I kept criticizing people for saying that DMC3 and DMC4 Dante would stop Mercer, and I'm gonna continue criticizing, like, you know, to criticize them. But then I said how Dante and his DT would be toying with Mercer, and, you know, he had access to his DT in both of these previous iterations of the game as well. So, you know, the only justification I can come up with is that people claimed how Dante would stop Mercer in his base form, like, without having to rely on his DT. And also I said how Dante would take this mid to high difficulty, but throughout the battle with Mercer, he was never in any peril or mortal danger or anything, so, yeah, I mean, I also can't really estimate how efficiently Mercer would be able to react, or block, or heal from Dante's attacks, and to what extent he could, like, I don't know, harness biomass. I mean, we've already established that it's all a matter of perspective, unfortunately, and, you know, at the end of the day, your guess is as good as mine. But this is precisely what I was referring to prior to the death battle. Like, so many things have to be altered or adjusted or taken into account or dismissed for us to be, you know, able to, like, compare any two fictional characters, really. And when I said that the verses were not as incompatible as I originally thought, I was mostly referring to, like, these, like, this tremendous similarity between Dante's abilities and, you know, Mercer's abilities. So I tried to give some insight or reasoning, but I guess it's kind of presumptuous of me to even make this video in the first place and act like some sophisticated connoisseur of power scaling. And, you know, I'm sure someone like Seth the Programmer could probably disassemble this video immediately, like I said. But, you know, then again, as much as I recognize Seth as a good power scaler, and as delighted I am to watch any power scaling video on YouTube, really, I can't, like, part of me can't help but feel like it's all guesswork to some degree. Like, I mean, I'm sure these power scalers do a very professional job at providing evidence and comparing data and calculating stuff, but you know, at the end of the day, it's all fiction. Like, how, like, I mean, these people tend to include some mathematical equations to prove their point, and, like, how exactly would that apply, like, in a verse that changes when the plot requires it? Like, I mean, even manga artists themselves aren't really sure how power scaling works, and hence the plot holes sometimes. I mean, I know that some manga artists, like, I don't know, Toriyama, they like power scaling their characters, but I just don't feel like mathematics would play a role here. Like Naruto is faster than the speed of light, or Dante is faster than the speed of light because he traveled through space. I don't know, like, if that truly were the case all the time, I mean, then nobody would be able to, like, stop these guys ever unless they were, like, equally as fast or somehow by some margin, like, faster. So, and, you know, in anime and video games, like, you know, like, they tend to nerf characters for the sake of the plot, and it's not really all that dumbfounding, honestly. I mean, just look at Boruto and the lowballing that goes on there. And I know, like, that these power scalers have a reputation to live up to, but I have a feeling that their fans take whatever they say for granted, and, you know, I mean, who knows how many mistakes they make on a regular basis, but their fans are, like, you know, never the wiser, honestly. I mean, I'm positive that I've made a lot of mistakes subconsciously in my pursuit of comparing Dante to Mercer, but, you know, still I've always been hell-bent on getting to the bottom of these things, knowing full well, like, that there's no way to reach a firm conclusion, so... And apparently, believe it or not, there are, like, certain standards and patterns as to how you should power scale characters, and some elitist power scalers propagate this stuff, but, like, oh boy, like, I am in no way obliged to abide by any standards other than my own, or comply with any sort of criterion set by some random, like, self-proclaimed expert. So yeah, let's take Urizen for example. Like, Dante couldn't do anything to him, but then he could. Like, what changed? Like, I mean, sure, Dante gained access to a Sindal trigger, and he got his new sword, and he had been, like, imbued with the tree's energy and permeated and all that. But does that really give him the edge over Urizen's final form? Like, without Sin DT? I mean, you know, then again, he did absorb both swords, but is that really something that gives him the advantage over somebody who, like, got way more energy from the tree? And in addition to all that, consumed the Qliphoth Brute? Like, let's say Mercer was the main villain of DMC5. Like, if they wanted to, they'd make him, like, more intimidating, and Dante wouldn't be able to do anything, like, simply because of the restrictions of the plot. So, you know, like, it all revolves around the plot at the end of the day, and by the same token, like, if Mercer was just a regular guy, but with all his powers intact, and if he somehow, by chance, like, found himself in the DMC verse, like, Dante would probably smite him just to, like, demonstrate his power. Like, you get where I'm going with this, like, but I digress. Like, saying your opinion nowadays is a luxury we can't really afford, since it can easily backfire, and then you receive lots of backlash. But you know, not that I have anything to fear, given my literally non-existent target audience. Yeah, I mean, guess that's some kind of silver lining. Also, just realized that the aftermath of the death battle is longer than the death battle itself. So now, like I said, I scrutinized some. I scoured some forums to see people discussing this topic, and while I get where these people are coming from, and while I do agree that there is always a kernel of truth to these statements, I always take it with a grain of salt, well, a pile of salt, especially because their arguments usually boil down to some insanely hacks abilities like Quicksilver, or "'cause he's the son of Sparta, duh", or "in theory, Dante eats threats like Alex for breakfast, he'd vanquish him in one fell swoop and remain in mint condition." But all these statements lack credibility and have nothing to back them up, so I can't exactly say I'd wholeheartedly concur with them and subscribe to that view. I mean, the statements about Mercer not being able to hold a candle to Dante and his abilities being a far cry from Dante's in every way is stupid. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And anyway, this is, you know, extraneous to the topic at hand, though these statements are not erroneous per se, since I believe that Dante with his Quicksilver and Doppelganger is just too much to digest for Mercer, and maybe he would win by a landslide, honestly, but by the same token, there's no guarantee that Mercer wouldn't be able to decapitate Dante if he somehow managed to find an opening. As for Mercer's stamina, we can't really specify. He is said to be tireless, so we don't know if he can suffer attrition or if his strength can diminish. But maybe I set the bar too high. I mean, under any other circumstances or environment, Mercer's healing factor would come into play. And this way, I took a crucial component away from him by placing him in a deserted Times Square and putting him in dire straits. But then again, I did add those crows, because the poor guy needed a snack, and it's not like Dante wouldn't be able to stop him from consuming regardless, so... Then again, Dante wasn't able to stop Urizen from eating the fruit or Virgil from running away into his portal thingy. But he was exhausted after fighting all day, I guess, so they do feel fatigue then? All of this is really debatable and questionable, so... But yeah, but the similarity between their, like, fundamental abilities is undeniable, and the resemblance is honestly uncanny. Both of them share a set, like, of similar attributes. Their healing factors of paramount importance, their overall capacity is insane in every aspect, etc. So, yeah. And like I said, it's noteworthy to say that it's essentially impossible to devise a criterion which would allow us to, like, extrapolate and gauge the power levels of these two. Like, go figure! And it's because of this very reason that I surmise this video might raise some eyebrows, and that some people will probably be flabbergasted and find the outcome of this battle either egregious or anticlimactic, and my reasoning mediocre or deplorable or downright incoherent. But you know what, I digress. Like, whatever grievances you may have, don't be prematurely vituperative and jump to conclusions just yet, because despite all this, I'll try to give some insight as to why this unfolded the way it did. And like I said, there are people that utterly repudiate the sheer thought of Mercer being powerful, and as for those people, like, adamant about the notion of Mercer meeting his Waterloo at the hands of DMC3 or DMC4 Dante, and thinking that the very encounter or collision between the two would herald Mercer's demise and that Dante would lay him to waste with his bare hands, well, what can I even say to that? Like, I can only say that everyone's entitled to their own opinion, and mine just happens not to coincide with theirs, and you know what? That's totally fine. But then again, you've got people spewing nonsensical BS and like makeshift statements for the other party, aka Mercer. So it's like vice versa, but it's the same. It's still really stupid. And for instance, like you've got this one guy that made like a lengthy dissertation about how Mercer's reflexes surpassed Dante's, and how he could behead Dante without Dante even flinching or foreseeing it. And get this same person had the audacity to be blatantly persuasive and domineering about their opinion, and, in addition to that, he acted condescendingly, all while berating others that slightly disagree with them. And I mean, I swear to God, like, some people are just irredeemable, like, gluttons for any sort of altercation and attention, honestly, like. But as far as I'm concerned, there's literally no way to lend credence or fully corroborate the veracity of their statements anyway, because they're flagrant BS. And I guess, I've said this one too many times, and knowing my inclination towards repetition, I'll probably be saying it a lot more throughout the duration of this video. And I know that some of you may think that I'm pandering the Dante fanboys and that I'm being obsequious towards, well, I don't know, Dante, since I feel as though I've talked about him a lot more than I did about Mercer, but I assure you, like, both of these characters are equally badass in my eyes, and I think that's vividly clear. It should be. Admittedly, I did take Dante's Quicksilver and Doppelganger styles, like, away, and in doing so I've probably, like, inevitably facilitated things for Mercer and made this whole occasion, I don't know, more conducive to him further down the line, but such minor things did not determine the outcome of this battle. They're not minor, they're not frivolous or banal in any way. The Quicksilver style especially is a big deal, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like, in the end, even Mercer's familiarity with the terrain didn't really do him any good, and was ultimately trivial, so. And also, while it's true that I don't really see eye to eye with these people and their statements and their reasoning, this doesn't really exclude the possibility of me agreeing with their take on the outcome of this battle. But for the time being, we'll leave it at that, since it's irrelevant to the topic at hand. But you know how I said how, like, stating some possible outcomes would be redundant? Well, actually, you know what? Let's entertain this idea, in case you find my arguments lackluster or something. Like, we are not leaving any stones unturned. Like, okay, like, here goes nothing. First and foremost, Dante, maybe his demolition attack can't really disintegrate Mercer. Mercer had the familiarity with the terrain, but let's say that it was kind of hypocritical to play, and, unfair, to place Mercer in an area completely devoid of any individuals he could, well, munch on, I guess. So, maybe the disadvantage would be reversible otherwise. Maybe. Like, Okay, so let's state a number of circumstances and conditions under which this battle may have unfolded differently. Say things didn't go south for Mercer, like when the battle culminated and Dante started using his double trigger. Let's say Mercer didn't exert all of his power, or let's say he managed to somehow resuscitate himself fully after consuming the crows, and Dante didn't interrupt him, he didn't interfere, he let him consume the crows. Like, let's assume, also, that his armor doesn't take a toll on his speed, and he doesn't forfeit his agility and all that. And, yeah, let's say that Dante can't, for some reason, he can't accumulate enough energy for his Sin double trigger, or he doesn't have access to it for some reason. Well, the obvious reason being that Dante can pretty much eviscerate Mercer in this form, and he doesn't have a ghost of a chance. So Mercer now has significantly enhanced defense, and his attacks are, let's say, for some reason boosted. And his critical mass is inexhaustible. And likewise, his attacks gain a boost as well, like I said, I don't know, like, so even with all this at his advantage, Dante in his Dull Trigger form still overpowers him. I mean, Dante's defense is also augmented in his Dull Trigger form, and, his health regenerates gradually, even while taking blows, and, his attacks have an insane damage boost, like, we've been over this. And we don't know for sure if Mercer's armor can run out, since in the game it never did that, but we know how powerful base Dante is, even without his gauntlets. So in his Dull Trigger form, he could parry Mercer's attacks with ease. I mean, think of it like this, like Mercer in his armor form, he's in his armor form and he has great defense. Dante in his DT form, like, has great defense, plus his health regenerates. Both of them pay no heed to minor injuries, as they heal automatically. And let's say that, like Mercer has his blade and his muscle mass power. And Dante has his Dull Sword Dante, with the summoned swords active at all times. And, since he's in DT mode. And plus, he can switch to his Balrog or other weapons, and he can use them simultaneously. So, let's somehow say that they're even though they're not. Dante's superior, I don't know, I'm not sure, but I mean, definitely, yeah, Dante's superior swordsmanship and overall fighting style, definitely that overwhelms Alex. And if it was too close for comfort, even if Alex tried to retreat and glide his way out of Dante's maneuvers, Dante could easily catch up to him now that he has wings and can glide as well. And, even though Mercer shouldn't be able to glide in this form, he shouldn't be able to glide while equipped with his armor. So, let's say that Dante's Dull Trigger can eventually expire, as he can't maintain it forever in the game. And Mercer is fully amped, and he keeps spamming his Devastator attacks and takes full advantage of his armor. So Dante, in his base form, can still dodge these attacks easily. Furthermore, Dante can block him with his Royal Guard and still use all his other weapons to counter and even overpower Mercer with great intensity. Now, I mean, he can even use his Trickster style to teleport freely, but let's say Dante is in his base form and has no access to any of his weapons. This renders his Swordmaster and Gunslinger styles completely useless. Even with these two out of the equation, Dante still has his Royal Guard and Trickster styles, as well as his brute strength to resort to. So, the only problem here, the only issue, would be weakening Mercer's armor, assuming it grants him a whole lot of defense. Which, let's say it does. So, let's say that there's another scenario where Times Square is not deserted, and Mercer has a large number of people and zombies to consume and never run out of energy. So, do you really think Dante would overlook this and let him skedaddle and get out of harm's way? Dante would surely seize the opportunity and use it to his advantage. Let's also state yet another scenario where Dante is unaware of Mercer's presence or is hesitant to indulge Mercer's request to fight him, and Mercer then attempts to blitz Dante, and he goes straight for the jugular, and he tries to decapitate Dante. A notion I'm reluctant to touch upon, but so be it, So Dante's sensory abilities are also a thing. And telekinesis is also a thing. We've only seen it once in DMC 1, but we don't know if Dante could somehow manage to repel Mercer's attack by sheer thought. Also, here's some food for thought. What if Mercer tried to asphyxiate Dante? Suffocate him? Could Dante die from this? I mean, of course, Dante would probably never end up in this position unless he was completely out of stamina and had no access to his weapons or styles or DT or CNDT, and even then we don't really know if he would succumb to this. Also, there's another fun fact, while Dante was out cold and lay dormant in a slumber for a month, The Double Sword Sparta was concealing his presence. Does that mean that his Double Sword Dante, being the manifestation of his will, can do the same? Because it's literally the Sparta and the Rebellion combined. There's yet another possibility we could examine. It's another viable alternative Mercer can resort to. So, what if Mercer tried to consume one of the pedestrians and take their physical form? Like, as we already know, Mercer is capable of disguising himself as other people and taking their physical form, gaining their other traits, and all sorts of things. He's also capable of infiltrating facilities with advanced surveillance, and he can do all this without being noticed or arousing any sort of suspicion. So, this is a prominent feat, fully available and exclusive to Mercer. And these are somewhat unsavory means, but we said, like, no holds barred, so being treacherous or unscrupulous isn't uncalled for. All's fair. Let's say Mercer, like, doesn't engage Dante in his normal form, and Dante doesn't even lay his eyes on him. So granted, Dante's observation and perceptive abilities are great, and his sensory abilities seem to be good as well, as he could feel Urizen's presence and stuff, but what if he can't really see Mercer at all? Like, let's say Dante's, like, roaming the streets of Manhattan, and Mercer notices him, and he concocts a plan to consume some guy, take his form, and go up to Dante asking for some help, and then catch him off guard and stab him, like the same way he did to that, like, Blackwatch soldier. So, basically, orchestrating this wouldn't be too hard, but what would ensue then? Well, we can only speculate, honestly, at the end of the day, like, because Dante's reflexes and intuition are very good, but as shrewd as he is, he tends to be reckless, and it's not like he's clairvoyant. So, would he be able to discern it, like, distinguish the real from the fake, or read through Mercer's malicious intentions? Mercer would definitely have to go for the head in order to kill Dante, but wait, wouldn't that kill Dante? And you can't consume something that's dead, and Mercer's goal was basically to consume Dante. Like that doctor shot himself in the head to prevent Mercer from consuming him. I mean, it wouldn't be completely unbecoming of Dante to let his guard down, but regardless, I think it would also be, I think it would all be for naught and in vain, and in all likelihood, even this attempt probably wouldn't amount to anything for Mercer, and because I doubt he'd be able to ameliorate or change the status quo in any way. So there is absolutely no way to ascertain any of these claims and possibilities, and there is absolutely no way to provide concrete evidence for the negligible subtleties and the ambiguities that are basically ubiquitous. And since everything is disputable, and I'm sure someone, everything is arguable. Maybe everything I've said so far was wrong. And I'm sure someone more qualified could, debunk this video in a matter of seconds. I mean, for all I know, this could all very well be a bunch of phony baloney, honestly. So yeah, if you feel outraged at the final verdict and you find it blasphemous and think that the aforementioned claims are preposterous and you think that I heavily downplayed Mercer and that he could, in fact, win against Dante, then more power to you, I guess. And if you want to go the extra mile and comment your opinion, or address any elephant that could potentially be in the room, vitriolic or not, you're most welcome to do so in the comment section below, as all feedback is highly appreciated, as long as you keep it civil, profanity-free, and with no toxicity. So yeah, knock yourself out. Just bear in mind that everyone's entitled, to their own opinion, and we should all agree to disagree, and blah blah blah, yada yada yada. So yeah, I don't really condone any sort of harassment, so please don't molest me. I mean, not this video will even have any reception to begin with. I mean, it'd be much to my consternation if this vid actually amassed over, 100 views. So, yeah. So basically, what was I also gonna say? Nah, but I mean, the crux of the whole discussion, the bottom line, is that Dante takes this fight mid to high difficulty. Mercer is an insanely resilient fighter and has exhibited a variety of very commendable skills, one too many times, so I'll give credit where it's due. I like Mercer and Dante as much as the next guy, no homo, but as amazing as both of these two are, they're not omnipotent. So, another thing worth mentioning is that comparing Dante and Virgil that are literally from the exact same game is aggravating enough. Now, I'm not insinuating that one is stronger than the other, but Virgil ate the Qliphoth fruit while he was Urizen, and, that same fruit made Mundus the Demon King. On top of all that, I don't know if the demons V slaughtered add up to that, boost, but Virgil has access to a Sindel trigger now. And Dante, on the other hand, he has merged with the rebellion in Sparta. He's unlocked his Sindel trigger form as well, and his new Devil Sword Dante. And, I guess that the power he was being imbued with by the Qliphoth for a month also has something to do with his power. So, anyway, Virgil's swordplay is held in very high regard, very high regard in video games, even among characters such as, I don't know, Sephiroth and Raiden, and he is presumably the best swordsman in gaming. I mean, the guy can cut through dimensions and at lightning speed, and he can open portals and all sorts of things. And Dante can go toe-to-toe with this guy. So I think these are just nuances, honestly, between them. So yeah, imagine Dante and Virgil versus Mercer and Heller. Okay, that's another topic for another time. But yeah, basically, what do I even have to say? I don't know, I honestly have no idea. Mercer, he has consumed so many individuals, and he has inherited, well, he hasn't really inherited, he's let's just say their skills, talents, memories, and traits are all embroidered and engraved into his brain. And going by that logic, what if Mercer consumed a variety of skilled martial artists or swordsmen? Wouldn't that grant him access to these abilities as well? And also, you might be wondering, why didn't I compare Heller to Dante? Heller consumed Mercer, so why? Is it because he's black? Are you racist? Well, no, obviously. I mean, I guess it's simply because I find Alex to be more iconic, and I think a lot of people will agree with this. I mean, it's the same with Nero. Nero is ostensibly supposed to be more powerful than both Dante and Virgil, but if I had to compare Dante to Heller, who has consumed Mercer, I'm pretty sure I can vouch for Dante even here. I'd wager he'd be able to handle Heller without even having to resort to a Sindel trigger. I mean, he would in the end, ultimately, the same way he did for Mercer, but you know what I'm trying to say. Also, yeah, editing this video is most likely gonna be a very tantalizing task because I'm gonna have to align the audio with the cutscenes and then cut them, trim them, speed them up, and synchronize them, and I don't really see myself doing a very good job at this, but I'll try my best, honestly, and, well, yeah, and, and also, I don't really see, I don't know why I'm saying this, but I don't really know if Mercer even, if Prototype even falls under the category of hack and slash games, because I don't really know. So, yeah, editing these segments is gonna be a painstaking job, but oh well. Whew, so yeah, sheesh, I don't exactly know what to do for the remainder of the video. I don't want to end it too unceremoniously since most of my vids end in an abrupt fashion, but it seems as though I've lost track of time again, so I gotta end this full throttle, honestly. So, if I don't sound as exhilarated and as enthusiastic as I did at the beginning of this video, don't hold it against me, please, because I've been talking vehemently and incessantly for the last hour or so. So, you poor guy, summoning the willpower to make these videos is enough of a hassle in and of itself, especially because I'm the epitome of laziness. So, at any rate, the complexity and ambiguity of this topic was low-key what stimulated and encouraged me to make this video in the first place. Well, that, and like I said, I constantly ponder the thought of comparing these two, and I derive pleasure from comparing fictional characters, and and seeing people on forums give blatantly superficial arguments and spouting a bunch of mumbo-jumbo that motivated me to analyze this even further. So yeah, I've always derived some sort of vicarious gratification from watching evenly matched anime characters battle ever since I was a kid, and this would often spark my curiosity and thought process and incentivize me to come up with my own ideas for a perfect anime battle. And that's kind of what instigated me to make this video in the first place, and I was low-key disappointed by the final battle between Naruto and Sasuke because I had envisaged something of astronomical proportions and a great deal of strategizing. And strategizing was like a mandatory thing in Part 1 Naruto, and I wish I could have somehow contributed to the final battle between Naruto and Sasuke and Shippuden. But, you know, basically, I mean, I'm not calling the final battle disastrous by any means. As a matter of fact, the animation was insane. But they had acquired some really big power-ups, and that had the impact on the fight itself. And don't get me wrong, I really love like Naruto's Kurama form and Sasuke's perfect Susanoo, but I just think that the transition between, I mean, from taijutsu to like their giant forms was kind of like hastily executed, but that's just me, and, well, yeah. But yeah, I don't want to derail myself and swerve off topic, so. And I really love both of these games a lot, like, I adore these games. And I'm not talking about the visual fidelity, like, the over-the-top style of DMC and the unparalleled dynamic movement and prototype, like, it's just sublime, like, and I'm sure everybody yearns for a good death battle, you know, every once in a while. So yeah, anyway, I seriously wish somebody could animate this, like, I can totally see it, like, because, I mean, I did create this battle, so yeah. But yeah, enough with the self-deprecating, like, I hope you enjoyed this embarrassingly irksome journey that was this video, and I hope it was worthwhile. On a serious note though, I have a lot more video ideas, and I hope they'll come to fruition and that I'll be able to go through with the majority of them, if not all of them, because realistically speaking, some of them pertain to somewhat irrational and nebulous topics, so. But knowing me, and knowing how lazy I am, who knows. Anyway, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, click the notification bell, and yeah, well, anyway, see ya, and peace out. Aw, man, my throat is dry. Who'd have thought this would end up being so taxing on my voice? Aw, man. Yeah, I gotta go imbibe some of that enslaved moisture, you know, the boneless ice. Also, gotta reevaluate my life choices. Shit.